Every clean room has challenges. Where do you turn for answers? Real questions from real professionals. Expert insights you can trust. All answered. Inside the Cleanroom. Presented by Contec Cleanroom.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Inside the Cleanroom. My name is Christina Adkison, and I'm here today to talk to you about something that we get asked about a lot, which is training and making sure all the people who are working in the facility are up to date on best practices within SOP and the CCS and your CCS. So we have to think too, how do we build a culture of clean outside of the CCS? So thinking beyond the CCS, how do we really build and maintain that culture? So I'm here today with Patricia Igneczi, who's gonna really delve into how do we build that contamination control culture, and how can we think outside the box outside of the CCS. So let's start from the beginning. How do we start building that culture of clean within our facility?
Yeah, thanks, Christina. So like you said, you've got your CCS, you've got your procedures, and that honestly is the perfect place to start with that culture, because you have to have this understanding that people are going to have to execute these things, right? So make sure that when you are writing your CCS, your policies, procedures, job aids, work instructions, keep in mind that these need to be, executable documents. And I feel like that seems like a no-brainer, but start building the culture there, making sure that it's very clear to operators, what is expected of them from a contamination control mindset.
So I think it's so important that facilities, they need to have everything documented. They need to have their operators trained of what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. But is that enough to be compliant? Is it enough just to, go through the training of the operators? Is there something else we need to be thinking about?
Yeah, so like you said, you've got to be compliant, right? You have to train your operators. I mean, this is a regulatory expectation that your operators need to have adequate training to execute the role that they're doing. But unfortunately, what typically happens, because, time is money and you want to get those operators on the floor, a lot of times operators are just trained simply to go through the motions, right? They have a job to execute, so they're trained how to perform that specific task, right? Unfortunately, that starts to fall short, right? You can get an operator on the floor, they're doing what they need to do, but they're maybe not recognizing contamination risks that are out there, or how their specific behavior may actually impact contamination. So outside of just going through the motions, right, and checking that compliance checkbox, you need your operators to truly have a grasp on why, right? Why it's so important that they execute this technique exactly as they're supposed to, right? What the different risks are of contamination, right? So that they can kind of be on the lookout for those things that maybe fall outside of, again, just going through the motions. But, that's why it really is so important that you go beyond just that, that checkbox training.
Absolutely. So with that being said, there are so many different types of roles within a facility and so many different types of jobs people are performing. Do you feel like the training needs to be the same for everyone?
Yes and no. So the baseline training should be the same, right? It shouldn't matter what that operator is doing, whether they are that aseptic filling operator, or if they're just someone that goes in and does the cleaning and disinfection, or comes in and takes EM samples at the end of the day. They all need to have a really solid grasp on contamination control, right? Annex 1 puts it really well, kind of listing out the basic competencies that your operator should have, right? Like an introduction to microbiology concepts. They need to understand hygiene and how that may impact the clean room, right? So every operator really should start with those key, baseline concepts of contamination control. But, right, every operator is different. Every role is different. So to just give everyone that same cookie cutter training, you're doing yourself a disservice, right? Everyone needs to understand kind of their specific role and how that impacts the overall contamination control of the site, right? That really does help to build that awareness, right? And to create that accountability of your operators if they know where they fit in and the impact, positive or negative that they can have.
And I think it's so important too that there's so many different people, like you said, doing so many different jobs, but every job that's being done within that facility is important. So every job, so how do you really drive that message home that no matter what they're doing, they can play a critical key role in that contamination control culture?
Yeah, I think we've all heard, the phrase, if everyone's responsible, no one's responsible, right? Because you think, oh, if I just kind of, take it easy today and I'm not really doing what I need to do, like there's controls, there's other people, there's other things that are gonna, kind of play catch up and maybe fix those mistakes that I've made. But, like you said, every role, every operator, everything that happens in a clean room can have an impact on contamination, right? So you do need to make sure that every single person that steps foot into that clean room, they know the impact they specifically have, right? And why what they do really matters, right? That's what really is going to help build that culture, build that accountability. So making sure that, yes, you talk to your operators about the contamination control strategy, but you say, you know what? This is where you fit in. And these are the things that you can personally do, to help strengthen the contamination control of the facility.
Yes, I think it's so important for people to know that the role they play is so pivotal in what they're trying to manufacture and what their goals are within their facility. So I think that, what we're talking about today is so important to just really drive home the impact that everyone makes a difference, and that, within that facility, we're all in this together and we can all, really work together to really reach that common goal.
Absolutely. I think creating, again, that awareness, the responsibility, it really does help to empower your operators. And that's what you need, right? To build that culture of clean, you need your operators to feel engaged and empowered, and feel like they're really making a difference.
This has been a great topic, and I'm so excited to delve more into building a culture of clean. And that's it for today's episode of Inside the Cleanroom. We're so glad you joined us. We hope you can take this information back inside your cleanroom.